Hello, I'm Josh. Welcome to Hazel's Adventures. This is our 1951 Kaiser Deluxe we call Hazel, and we want you to come right along with us on our adventures. Hello everyone. Today's the day we're going to start working on the transmission. I'm going to drag it outside a little bit, and we're going to do like we did with the engine. First thing I'm going to do is pressure wash, try and get all the grease and oil off of it. And then after that, we'll pop her up on a table and start taking her apart. And we have the torque converter out. It was definitely different than taking a newer torque converter out. And in case you've never seen inside of a torque converter, which very few people have, especially non-mechanical people, this is basically what they look like. A little different. This is a different design as this two-piece torque converter. Part of it goes into this outer bell, which goes on to this part, and then the inner torque converter, which is this one, goes onto this. These two are fixed, and this turns this part, which would drive the pump and everything for the transmission. The outer torque converter part, which we have here, is going to go on to this part and drive the tail shaft. So if you don't know how torque converters work, basically your automatic transmission, they run with fluid, transmission fluid. That fluid fills this whole area, and the rotation of the engine forces that fluid outward. And as that fluid turns and comes back around, a normal torque converter would have an impeller, which would be this part. And as that fluid comes back around and hits that impeller, they would turn this part of the shaft, instead of a two-piece design like this one, where one's going to turn the pump and one's going to turn the shaft. But that's just basically how a torque converter works. They force fluid outward, the change in direction hitting the impeller adds torque to it, which turns your shaft. But we got it out. What we're replacing in here, which this is one of the main leaky spots, is the seal right here. I'm sure it's just sat for 40 years old, dried out. Now it's, been used, so it's got oil, but it definitely does not seal up very well. So we're going to pop this guy out, put the new one in, and then go on to a different part. Okay, here is the old seal. It is hard as a rock. It's not pliable anymore. Yeah, no wonder it was leaking a lot. A lot of fluid passes through here too. So, yeah, I had to tear it up to get it out, but that's normal. But this should help tremendously, just even in this spot, getting that new one in there. That thing is just hard. We'll pop the new one in real quick and be done with the front part. All right, new seal's in. I did wang a little dent in it right there, but it should be fine. It's just an outside superficial thing. But it did seal up. All right, after looking at this one, and the way it was, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure the seal wasn't in backwards. Maybe it wasn't, it's hard to tell with the way the rubber is, but this part was sticking onto the outside. That one didn't have it, that was just a plain seal, but there is a room for this to have fit inside there like that, but it was like this. So I think it probably should have been like this. Uncertain. Regardless, the new one's in. We're gonna now switch to taking this dirty pan off, which this is part that I'm extremely interested in anyway, because this under here is gonna tell us how much wear we have, and how much clutch material and stuff is in the bottom of this pan. I know it's sitting upside down, but it should still be stuck there from years. Hopefully right here there's a magnet in this pan. I cannot guarantee that's what it is, but it would be nice, and then we can see if there's any metal stuck to that or anything. So let me pop this off real quick, and then we'll take a look. All right, got the pan off. There is some clutch material in here. I know it looks, you might think that looks really bad, but which this was not a magnet, it's just a spot down there where a piece of the transmission goes. It does have like a filter, screen filter, which we can just, a little bit of stuff on here. That's a little unusual. It might be little pieces of metal. I'll check that out. But we can clean that up. But what's really cool, check this out. I did not expect this at all. Like on a normal transmission, you pull that off, you'd have a valve body. That's all you'd see. Not this. This is actually really neat to me. 1951 automatic transmission. Still not entirely sure how they got it working or how it works, but it's just really cool to me that you can see all of the inside internal workings. I know these are the bands that would help it, kick down, like when you're shifting down, which I'm gonna have to adjust those. But still, all the clutch packs and everything, you can see the gears back there. We're gonna pull this part off here in a minute. That's where it shifts. But this is just really cool. That's what I'm glad I, in a way now, had to tear this apart just to seal it up. And I don't regret seeing this. It's really neat. You people who've ever torn apart a hydrometric transmission, an old one, maybe you're used to it, but I don't know. This just looks really cool to me. So I'm gonna keep on going. I'm gonna pull that other pan off where the shifters are, pull the back tail shaft part out. So I got gaskets for those, get it all torn apart to where I can get all that stuff cleaned up too. Then we'll be back at it. But this is just really neat. Got the front, pull it off there and you can see everything. See how the whole thing works. That's just awesome. Okay, the transmission is as far apart as it needs to go. We got the tail part off. We're gonna replace this gasket. We got the side off to replace this gasket and where the shifter mounts on right here. When I was speaking of a valve body earlier, when you take the bottom off of a newer transmission, that's what this is. This is what's going to direct your fluid for your shifts and where it shifts here. So now Hazel doesn't have park. If you had a newer transmission with park, all that would do would be move a rod that would push a pin into somewhere that locks everything. That's all park is. She only has neutral, drive, low, and reverse. And reverse is part of this here, but when I took a bolt out over here, right here, it pulled a spring out, and I got to get all that back together too. That might be a little fun. But all we got to do is replace that gasket, replace the pan gasket, and just the other ones, and that's all it needs. We just got to make sure, and then hopefully it won't be pouring fluid anywhere. I still think this is really cool. You can see how everything works. I am going to have to look up these bands. You can adjust these, and these seem really loose. There is another set under here that you can't even move, but I don't know how it's supposed to be. I'll have to look up how much tension or play or how to adjust these. Should know how to bolt on top to adjust, but she does have a problem. When Hazel takes off to drive, it just shifts, goes immediately first, second, third, fourth before you're hardly going at all. Maybe we can resolve that problem by cleaning some of this stuff up and adjusting those bands. It also doesn't want to kick down when we're going up a hill. If we're going up a hill in fourth, you could have the throttle all the way to the floor and you about come to a stop before it's going to shift down. Same thing when you're coming to a stop. You stop and you can feel it shifting down right when you stop. But maybe we can get that taken care of. If not, it's not a big deal. I pretty well drove it that way ever since we got her going. You just have to be careful with it. But we're going to clean this thing up with the gaskets, start putting it back together, and at least get something done tonight, so that's good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have one resealed 1951 hydrometric transmission. New front seal, new gasket under here, new O-rings under here. I do still have to do something right here, but we'll talk about that later. New gasket here, new seal here, new pan gasket. She's all sealed up. The next step is for me, not today because it's getting too late, to completely wire brush this thing down clean it all up, and paint it. It's not going to be anything special, it's just going to be black. After I paint it and everything, I will put the torque converter back on it. Then after that, we can put the flywheel back on the motor and mount them back together. So we are definitely getting closer to be able to put it all back in the car. Thank goodness. These bolts right here are ones that would adjust those bands inside. Tonight I'm going to look up about how to do that and what it needs. So, till tomorrow when we get to painting.